Hey guys, here with another deck tech. I just wanted to walk through. Sorry about the long pause between videos. I'm still trying to figure out the audio and figure out how to get stuff situated. And I apologize about the length of the last video. This one should be a bit shorter. So this is my Mean Green Bean Machine. It's Omnath, Locus, and Mana. He is 2 colorless, 1 green. You don't lose unspent green mana as steps and phases end, and he gets +1/+1 for each unspent green mana you have. So he's a nice little storage tank for all the mana that you can't use on your turns. So there's a lot of ways that a deck like this can go. My point is trying to get as much mana on him, trying to draw out the deck, and then win through various different means. So we have 1 Planeswalker. It's just Garruk, Primal Hunter. The +1 and -6 don't matter. It's the -3. You draw cards equal to the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Omnath is always going to be 1+ however much mana you have stored in your pool, as long as he's alive. So popping something like Garruk down and hitting him could easily draw you 30 cards or so, getting us to the win cons we need faster, or allowing us to pump out a bunch of mana dorks to further our goals. Creatures. This is going to be a pretty easy section. Most of these creatures are pretty straightforward. There's only a few that really matter that I have to stop on. I will let you guys know this is mostly budget deck. I'm still working on it, so there's still room to move. So if you don't hear me talk about certain combos or something like that, I might just not have them in here yet. So Circle of Dreams Druid, tap, add a green for each creature you control. This is a very big one in this deck because you can use it with various different pieces to untap it and then retap it, untap it, retap it, creating infinite green mana. Devoted Druid, taps for green. You can put a -1 counter on it to untap it. There are combos with this, but not in my deck. So basically this is just a 2-cost mana dork. Druid of the Cowl, mana dork. Elvish Archdruid, gives all elves +1, which is pretty irrelevant but could matter, and taps and gives you 1 green for each elf you control, which, as you can see, most of the creatures are elves. I think there's 3 or 4 that aren't, maybe 5, but they all fit the other agenda that we need, so they got to be in there for me. Elvish Mystic, 1 drop, taps for 1. Eternal Witness, very important that we have ways to return cards from our graveyard with my strategy, so Eternal Witness is a big one. Azuri Renegade Leader. It is 1 colorless, 2 green. Legendary Elf Warrior. You pay 1 green to regenerate another target elf. This could be very nice if you have Circle of Dreams Druid or another elf out that we need on the field and someone tries to use a kill spell on it. But otherwise, you're going to be using the bottom ability, which is 2 colorless, 3 green. Elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until the end of turn. This can be easy game winner right here, because if you're floating 40, 50, 60 mana on Omnath and you have all your mana dorks untapped, you start your turn, you could just pump as much as you want. You could pump 50 into that and pump your team up and then swing in for the win. So this is one of our win cons in the deck. Flinthorn Elves, green, taps for green. Gyre Sage, colorless green. It has evolves. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has greater power or toughness than this creature, you put a +1 counter on it, and it taps to add 1 green for each 1/1 counter on it. This is probably one of the weaker ones. I'm probably going to end up removing it, but I currently haven't seen any cards just laying around in my collection I could put in it. So I'll probably look more into removing that one. Although it can get +1 counters on it, it can do stuff. It's just not as likely as something like Incubation Druid, which is 1 colorless, 1 green. You could tap it to add 1 mana of any type that a land you controls could produce. But if it has a +1 counter on it, you add 3 instead. And you could pay 5 to adapt him, to put 3 +1 counters on him. Buffs him up a little bit, makes him a bit of a better blocker, allows him to tap for more mana. I usually just use him as a 2-drop mana dork, but it can help out if you have nothing else to do with your mana and you're sitting around. Kamal, Heart of Krosa. This is 6 colorless, 2 green. Legendary Human Druid. At the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until the end of turn. He also has colorless green. Until the end of turn, target land you control becomes a 1/1 elemental creature with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. And it's still a land. So this is another one that's just really nice. If you have a bunch of mana floating around, you'll see later we have a couple spells to pull a lot of lands out, and we're not doing anything with them. Might as well buff them up and just send them in as 4/4 indestructible blockers. Attackers. Because you'll be able to make them 1/1 vigilance indestructible hastes. Then you'll go to combat, they'll get the +3/+3 and trample. So if you have enough mana to pump up 10 of your lands, it's already going to be hard for your opponents to be able to deal with this. Karametra's Acolyte. It is 3 colorless, 1 green. You tap it, add mana equal to your devotion to green. This is another one like Circle of Dreams Druid that this one with a couple other things can just infinite and give us as much mana as we want. Leaf Glider is a 2-drop Monodork. Llanowar Elves, 1-drop Monodork. Llanowar Visionary is a 3-drop that enters the battlefield. You get to draw a card and taps for a green. Costs a little more, but drawing a card could help. Priest of Titania, colorless green, taps for a green for each elf you control. So another one that can combo off with our things. Reclamation Sage, it's an elf. It destroys an artifact or enchantment when it enters. So it's nice to be able to have that. Plus, it could be a blocker if you need it, since you need a lot of your other creatures for mana-based things. You could just throw this in front of something. Scavenging Ooze. I put this in here because there's a couple tutors in the deck. It's really nice to be able to pull out some graveyard hate, especially at instant speed. And most importantly, one of our win cons involves everybody losing a lot of life. So Scavenging Ooze can be out and give us some life that we'll need to live from that spell. Seedborn Muse it's one of the best cards in this deck. It is 3 colorless, 2 green. Untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. So you're going to be untapping, and it'll get ridiculous and out of hand very fast. You could easily add 30-40 mana before your next turn starts, just because Seedborn Muse is untapping everything. Not to mention that it gives you blockers, it gives you response time, and everything else. Timeless Witness, it's Ewit, but twice if you need to, because you could eternalize it. So, very nice. And Wirewood Channeler, tap, add X of any one color, where X is the number of elves you control, or elves on the battlefield. This one, just like the other ones, combos off with some things. We'll go down to the sorceries. We have a Ball of God Recovery. Again, we need to get some cards back from our graveyard and into our hands, so that's really going to help out. Wizard Brawl, I threw some Snowlands in here just because. I don't know if they're on the actual deck list, but I figured why not. It's removal, it makes him indestructible, which can be really nice, because if I try to pop this off right at the beginning of the turn, I could bait out removal, bait out a counter spell, or anything else that I want. And if it goes through, well, Omnath has indestructible until the end of turn, which could be very nice if we have Kamal out or someone that gives trample. Broken Bond destroys an artifact or enchantment and lets us ramp. Explore, put a land from your hand. Or you can play an additional land this turn, draw a card. Harmonize, pay 4, draw 3. Again, things like Broken Bond, I know it's sorcery speed, but we usually have the mana floating anyway, and to let us ramp out another land is going to help us 2 turns down, so it's not that big of an issue. Same with Harmonize. A lot of times we're just trying to get to our win con. We already have 30-40 mana floating on Omnath, so we're kind of trying to get to where we need to be faster. Healing Technique. It's another return a card from the graveyard to your hand, but this one you gain life equal to that card's mana value, which can be relevant. Like I said, one of our win cons, main win cons, actually involves everybody losing life. It also has Demonstrate, so if there's another card that you want to return, you can go ahead and return 2 things, and just give the guy with no graveyard or the worst graveyard the ability to bring something else back. Shamanic Revelation. It's 3 colorless, 2 green. Draw a card for each creature you control, and gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. Most of the time, you're going to be gaining about 4 life. Not a lot of things in this deck are going to be over unless you have Kamal out or you have a buff or something else going on. But it's really nice to be able to draw 10 cards because you have 10 Monodorks out. Again, Regrowth, return a card. Rampant Growth, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Overwhelming Stampede. This is one main win con in the deck. Go ahead, pump up your Omnath and drop this bad boy, and you're going to win the game. 3 colorless, 2 green. Until the end of turn, creatures you control gain trample and gain +X/+X, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Pretty straightforward. If you have 5 lands, 20 mana on Omnath, few mana dorks out, you go ahead and you give everything +21/+21 because he's already a 1/1 with 20 mana floating. That's going to take out, if not the whole table, you're going to simplify the game very fast. Kodama's Reach, search for 2 basic lands, 1 in the hand, 1 on the battlefield tap. Hurricane, this is the card that inspired me to build this deck. It costs X and a green, deal X damage to each creature with flying and each player. So this is one of the main win cons that I wanted to build around for this deck. Basically, Omnath gets a ton of mana, float a bunch of mana into this, deal a shitload of damage to everybody. If you have ways to return this card, you could redo it in case you get countered. And you have other ways to bring it back, and more ways to bring it back. So all you really need to do is use a few of the ways that we have, that you'll see throughout here too, to gain some extra life. Or you can swing out, deal damage to people, lower them down, beat them down, and then use this as a finisher anyway. Not to mention that it deals damage to creatures with flying, so if you're facing a Dragon's deck or something like that, this could be really nice just for a board wipe that you could return later if you want to win the game this way. Sylvan Awakening, 2 colorless, 1 green. Till the end of turn, all lands you control become 2/2 elemental creature tokens with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. This is another one. You have 20 lands out. Go ahead, just swing out. You're going to deal some damage. 3 visits, you're going to search for a forest card, put it on the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Always important to remember, it just enters the battlefield, not tapped, so that can help out in a lot of situations. Traverse the Outlands. This is another big, I'm going to take every land from my deck and put it down thing. It's 4 colorless, 1 green. Search your library for X basic land cards where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. Put them on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. You're going to go ahead and search for, let's say, 30 lands. You're going to get basically every land out of your library. Put it on the battlefield tapped. Verdant Mastery. This is a nice one that you could pump out some lands early for 4 mana, but you'll ramp someone else if you do that. Or if you find it later game, you just go ahead and you just cast it for 6. You search your library for 4 basic land cards, reveal them, put 1 onto the battlefield, tapped under an opponent's control if you decided to pay 4 instead of the 6. Put 2 of them onto the battlefield tapped under your control, and put 1 into your hand. So even if you pay the 4, I mean, you're still going to really set yourself up for the future. We'll move on to the instants now. Autumn's Veil protects against blue and black, very important. Charge Through, very nice at instant speed to give Omnath trample in case he doesn't already have it. Another good win con in the deck, and it allows you to draw a card so it replaces itself. Court of Calling, this card lets you, you're going to convoke it, it costs X and 3 green. You can tap any number of creatures you control. You're most likely not going to tap any because most of them are mana dorks. It doesn't really matter. Search your library for a creature card with mana X or less and put it on the battlefield. This is very important that it's instant speed because you can wait until your opponents are tapped out to go search for the perfect card. You can get that Azuri that you need, that you already have all the mana dorks for, so that you can pump them up and you can go for the win. Early game, I really like to use this for Seedborn Muse. Just put this out there, instant speed, throw it down. There's not much people can do about it unless they counter the spell, of course. And it goes to your turn, you're going to untap all your lands, leaving you open for the other instances that you have, or pumping other things if you want to. Not to mention you're going to get that Omnath big, which is what we need. I have a Fog in here, just simple if I don't want to block it and I'm setting up for a win. If someone swings out at me thinking they're going to take me out of the game, I'll just go ahead and Fog. Heroic Intervention, just in case people try to wipe the board. Omnath is a big bean. People will try to take him out, especially if they see that you have 30 mana floating on him. So it's important to have some responses to that. Inscription of Abundance. 1 colorless, 1 green. Kicker for 2 colorless and 1 green. This is another big card for the deck that helps out with Hurricane, because the first one is put 2/+1 counters on target creature. Doesn't really matter. The other 2 are the ones that matter the most, which is target player gains X life, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures they control. Hey, I'll just go ahead and gain 40 life because Omnath's big. And also target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. It's a removal spell. So you get removal, you gain a crap load of life. and it's all at instant speed. It's pretty much what you want in a deck like this. Return to Nature, 1 colorless, 1 green. I don't see a lot of people run this card, but this is honestly one of my favorite green cards in the common spot. Go ahead, choose 1, destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. Graveyard hate is very important in decks, not to mention that graveyards are very popular in Commander. Plus, being able to destroy an artifact or an enchantment, all up to you. For 2 mana, I put this in pretty much every single green deck that I have. And if it isn't in there, I need to double check and go at it. Return to the Wild Speaker, 4 colorless, 1 green, instant speed. You get to choose 1. You either give all non-human creature, you either draw cards equal to the greatest power amongst non-human creatures you control, which Omnath is not a human, or you give all non-human creatures you control +3/+3 until the end of turn. This can be nice if maybe you're swinging out with your lands and elves and stuff like that, and you know that you just need that little bit extra damage to get through. The +3/+3 can really make a big difference, not to mention that this is also a way to just draw our entire deck. Very important to watch out for, though, because I've accidentally done this before. You draw cards equal to the greatest power amongst non-human creatures you control. You need to make sure that you do not have Omnath too high when you play this, because if you have Omnath with infinite floating mana and you use the top part, you will just draw yourself and kill yourself. So, be careful of that. Reclaim, put target card from your graveyard on top of your library, another return thing. Another thing with Return of the Wild Speaker, I forgot to mention. If you are going to use that top one and you're close, you could do different things like reclaim and just bring back cards that help you ramp or do different things. Try to waste some of your mana. Not to mention, you'll see some artifacts that you can try and pump some stuff into to try and get that out. So that way you can draw your whole library. Ram Through, another main win con for me. One of my favorite cards. 1 colorless, 1 green. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. If the creature you control has trample, excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. So this is a really nice one if you have Omnath already having trample and someone goes to respawn. I've done this a few times now where people go, okay, well, when you go to combat, I'm going to go ahead and respond by getting rid of your Omnath, and they go to exile him. So I go, okay, well, with that on the stack, I'll have Omnath, who already has trample because we're already in combat, deal 100 damage to your creature that's out there. And your guy is only, they're not going to be that high, basically. You're going to deal all the excess damage to their face and kill them, which will stop the stack and will actually make it so Omnath wouldn't be destroyed. Or if someone goes to counterspell when you go to do something during combat or different things, you can go ahead and ram through and just remove the problem. Kamal's Ambush, or Kawani's Ambush? Still can't read. 2 colorless, 1 green. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. It's a removal spell. It's a land. It's what you need. Kamal's Will. This is another good one. If you control your commander, which is the whole point of this deck, so you should when you do this, you get to choose both, which the top one is until the end of turn. Any number of target lands you control become 1/1 elemental creatures with vigilance, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. And the bottom one is choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control deals damage equal to its power to that creature. So it's a removal spell, and it's also a way to pump up all your creatures to use them as blockers if you really need to, or what you're most likely going to do is, before you go to combat, turn them all into creatures so you can buff them and win the game. This is Snake's Veil. It's 1 green. It gives something hexproof, and then you can put a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is basically just a protection spell for Omnath. Summoner's Pact. Nice way to set yourself up with the card that you're going to need to win next turn. Creature-wise, that is. Or set yourself up for the future. Go get that Seedborn Muse to put out to help yourself. Get that Azuri Renegade Leader so that you can pump up your team next turn, or go get yourself the Circle of Dreams Druid, because why not? More mana. Vines of Vastwood. It's 1 green. It has a kicker for 1 green. Target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities. If you kick it, the creature gets +4/+4 until the end of turn. You're most likely not going to pump it unless for some reason you want to do that. It is target creature. I guess you can target your opponent's creature and buff it to help kill somebody, or you can use it to protect one of your creatures, but you're going to use it most likely for the top ability. And then Weather the Storm. There's a lot of times you'll draw 80 cards, go ahead, pump out all your mana dorks, throw them all out on the battlefield, use Weather the Storm, gain 3 life, storm count already is going to be very high, and then use Hurricane to win the game. Or if you just want to, if someone else is playing a lot of spells that turn, storm count does work for the amount of spells cast that turn. So if someone else has already cast 13 spells that turn, they try to pass, go ahead, Weather the Storm, get yourself all that life, set yourself up for the future, get yourself out of dead zone. Artifacts, pretty simple. They're all pretty straightforward ones. Codex Shredder, it's top of the library hate just in case people use tutors or different things, and it also can be used 5 and tapping it and sacking it to return a card to your hand. Elixir of Immortality, you pay 2, tap it, you gain 5 life, and you shuffle it and your graveyard into your library. It's nice for life gain, and if someone tries to remove your graveyard when you have a couple win cons in it, we have plenty of ways to draw our library back out, so we're not too worried about that. Key to the City, another very good card in this deck. 2 colorless, you could tap it, discard a card, up to 1 target creature, can't be blocked this turn, which is always going to be Omnath. And whenever it becomes untapped, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. So if you're not really doing much, you don't really need the mana, you can go ahead and use this and just discard it, targeting anything, even if it's not Omnath, even if it's an opponent's creature, or even at the end step, just so that when it goes to your turn, it'll untap, you could pay 2 and draw a card. Or, obviously, commander damage is a thing. So, Staff of Domination is one of the big combo pieces. Once you have set up infinite mana, you can do everything you would like out of these, which is usually going to be tapping the entire board down, gaining 1 billion life, and, of course, drawing your entire library out. Once you've drawn your library out, it's very, very, very hard to lose with this deck, because you have your responses to be able to stop people from targeting your stuff, like Autumn's Veil, Snake's Veil, Skin, and stuff like that. You're also going to have a million ways to return cards from your graveyard to your hand, which you'll be able to replay because, again, you already have infinite mana, so it's not really an issue. And on top of that, you're going to be able to do things like ram through at instant speed to be able to stop people if for some reason they try to do things that would go against your plans. So this is one of the main things. I'm sure if you guys are watching this, you guys already know what this card is and what it does. Swiftfoot Boots, 2 colorless, equipped creature has hexproof and haste, equipped for 1. Staple of most decks if you care about your commander. Umber Mantle is a new addition. I haven't used it yet, but this is another big combo piece because you can pay 3 and untap the creature, and then that creature gets +2/+2 until the end of turn. It's a really weird older card that because obviously they don't do untaps anymore, but this is one of the big combo pieces with your mana dorks. As long as you produce 4 green and this is equipped to the creature, you could just pay 3 to untap it, floating a green, and then retap it, untap it, retap it, untap it. Basically, as long as you have a mana dork that produces more than 4 green and you have this equipped, you have infinite mana. Now, your opponents do have a time to respond to it, but even when you tap the first time and you go to untap, you're going to have 1 green floating, which, as you've seen, the Vines of Vastwood, Veil, these are all cards that cost 1. So, big infinite combo piece, or infinite mana piece, which leads to the infinite combos, I guess, but enchantments, pretty straightforward. There's a couple that I've thought about adding in here, like Ingruk's Wake and stuff, but I'm still working out the ins and outs of this deck to see what I can actually cut. So, Greater Good, you can go ahead and sack Omnath, draw cards equal to his power, discard 3 cards, and then just replay Omnath. If he's a 50-50, you're going to draw 51 cards off of this, discard 3, and then just go ahead and just use 5 mana before you go forward in any step to replay him. Remember, do not change steps after he's been killed with Greater Good, because all the mana will float away. And especially if you're playing against a Yurlok, you're going to die. So, be careful of that. Indomitable Might, another big win con type card. You swing in with Omnath. People go to block. A lot of times people will be overconfident. They might block with something like a 1/1 Death Toucher because, oh, you don't have trample or anything like that. Well, you could go ahead and use Indomitable Might, flash it in. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, and it deals damage as though it weren't blocked. So you're going to go ahead and assign all of your commander's damage to him as if it weren't blocked, and you're going to take them out. Sessian Training. Colorless green. You enchant a creature you control. When it enters, you draw a card. An equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has trample. Always like to give him trample. Not to mention it's a cantrip, so it's really nice. And Wilderness Reclamation. 3 colorless, 1 green. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Another way to just leave mana open for instant speed removals, be able to float more mana into Omnath further in the plan. So that's the main part of the deck. Like I said, it's currently sitting at 170 with all things considered. Before I move on to the land base, just so you guys know, there are obvious cards that could probably be taken out of this if you had more money. There's Great Henge and other very large includes that you could put in this deck that would do good. But what I'm more or less trying to do is try to find more cards like Hurricane so that I can easily set up this combo where I'm not reliant on the one card just in case it were to get exiled. And different ways to just be able to do things like this, or sneak in easy wins like ram through to be able to just kill someone on the spot. But with all that being said, the deck runs pretty good. Still working on the consistencies of it. Here's the land base. The land base is pretty straightforward. Like I said, I have some snow lands in here. I just didn't change them. I have to go count and see how many I have. I think I'm running about 15. You're going to have enough lands out that it's not really going to matter. And there's only one card in the whole deck that cares about it. You could probably add more, but I haven't seen any yet. So Buried Ruin allows you to return artifact. There's a couple artifacts up here that matter that we can return that would really set us up, like Staff of Domination or Umber Mantle. So it's nice to have. Command Tower. I don't know why this is in here. You should probably take it out and put a forest in now that I think about it, because it's at least a forest, which could matter. But adds 1 mana of green to your pool, because that's your commander's identity, I guess. Forests, they tap for green. Mosswort Bridge has a hideaway. It's very easy to get this hideaway to pop off, because all you have to do is have a creatures with total power 10 or greater, which Omnath most likely will be, and will be very fast. So you can sneak out a win con at instant speed and really mess up someone's game plan. Rogue's Passage, because getting the bean through is nice, and Wirewood Lodge, because you could untap an elf to retap it and net more mana from it. It's also a combo piece, but I'm not sure if I have any combo with untapping an elf that would really matter. I'll have to re-look through or see what I can add, but anyways, that's the deck, guys. If you have any questions or any add-ons or anything, if you run this as your commander, let me know. I'm very curious to see if there's any cards that I could add more on the budget side. My goal with this is to really keep it down below the 200 mark, because I really enjoy the fact that for $200 I can have a deck that's this strong. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I should be back soon with another deck tech. I apologize about the pause between. I'm still trying to get some stuff done around the house and figure out a set date. I'm currently thinking maybe every Saturday I'll put up a different deck tech or some type of magic related video, and maybe do more in the future. But anyway, thanks guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.